I was standing there just out of the shower drying off with one of those tiny guest towels that barely wraps around your waist when there was a knock on the bathroom door, and I heard her voice soft calm like it was just any normal day. She said, "Need a towel?" It was my friend's mother-in-law. I froze. Not because I was embarrassed, though I definitely was, but because there was something in the way she said it. Like she already knew I needed one. And she was waiting. Before I get into how I ended up half-dressed in someone else's house, being offered a towel by my best friend's mother-in-law, who I barely knew at the time, let me tell you that this story changed everything. Here's what really happened. This all started on what seemed like just another random Thursday afternoon in late September. The leaves were just beginning to turn, and there was that crisp feeling in the air that made you want to be outside doing something productive. I wasn't even supposed to be in that house, but you know how it goes. One little favor turns into a whole situation that you never could have predicted. My friend Brandon had called me that morning around 10:30 just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee and contemplating whether to tackle the pile of paperwork on my desk or find an excuse to avoid it for another day. "Hey bro, I've got this small plumbing issue at Lisa's mom's house," he said, sounding a bit frazzled. I could hear his baby crying in the background and Lisa's voice trying to soothe her. "It's just a leaky shower head, nothing major. You mind checking it out? You're good with tools and she doesn't want to call someone and pay $300 for what's probably a fighting-nut fix." I glanced at the paperwork again and made my decision. "Sure thing, man. I had the afternoon off anyway, text me the address." "You're a lifesaver," Brandon said, the relief evident in his voice. "Lisa's been stressing about it all week. And I've been so swamped with work and the baby that I haven't had a chance to get over there." Now, for some context here, Lisa is Brandon's wife of about 3 years. They'd met in college, married right after graduation, and just had their first baby 6 months ago. Lisa's always been sweet, if a bit high-rung, especially since becoming a mother. And her mom, Janine, is the mother-in-law in question. Janine is in her late 40s, maybe early 50s, though she could honestly pass for younger. She's always impeccably put together. The kind of woman who looks like she stepped out of a lifestyle magazine, even when she's just running errands. Very polite, soft-spoken, with this graceful, almost mysterious quality about her. The kind of quiet confidence that makes you pay attention when she does speak. I had encountered her maybe once or twice during family gatherings, Thanksgiving dinner last year, Lisa's baby shower a few months back. Nothing more than polite pleasantries, a hello and how are you kind of interactions. She seemed nice enough, but we'd never had what you'd call a real conversation. So anyway, I grabbed my toolbox from the garage, threw on some old jeans and a comfortable tish, and drove across town to her neighborhood. It was one of those well-established suburban areas with mature trees lining the streets and houses that had clearly been maintained with care over the years. Her house was a beautiful Dori colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and flower beds that looked like they belonged in a gardening catalog. She opened the front door before I even had a chance to knock, as if she'd been watching for my arrival. She was wearing a soft blue cardigan over dark jeans, her hair pulled back in a casual but elegant way that somehow made her look both approachable and sophisticated. "You must be Brandon's friend," she said with a warm smile, extending her hand. "I'm Janine. Thank you so much for coming over on such short notice. I really appreciate it." "No problem at all," I replied, shaking her hand and noticing how soft and warm it was. "I'm happy to help," Brandon mentioned. "It's just a shower head issue." "Yes, it's been driving me absolutely crazy," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "It's been dripping steadily for about a week now, and I swear it's gotten worse each day. I'm sorry. I know this is probably way beneath your skill set, and I feel a bit silly calling someone over for something so minor." I laughed and hoisted my toolbox. "Trust me, I've dealt with much worse. And honestly, sometimes the simple fixes are the most satisfying." She led me through her living room, which was tastefully decorated in warm earth tones with comfortable-looking furniture and family photos scattered throughout. Everything was immaculately clean and organized, but it still felt lived in and welcoming rather than sterile like some perfectly maintained homes can feel. As we climbed the stairs, she continued explaining the problem. It started as just an occasional drip, but now it's constant. I've been putting a small bowl underneath it to catch the water, but I have to empty it twice a day now. The upstairs hallway was lined with more family photos. Lisa as a child, graduation pictures, wedding photos. At the end of the hall, she pushed open a door and gestured inside. "Here's the culprit," she said. The bathroom was really something. Marble tile work that looked like it had been professionally installed. A large soaking tub and a separate walk-in shower with glass doors. Everything was spotless and had this spa-like quality that made you feel like you should be paying admission just to be there. "Wow," I said, genuinely impressed. "This is beautiful work." She seemed pleased by the compliment. "Thank you. I had it renovated about 2 years ago. It was my little gift to myself after the divorce was finalized." I hadn't known she was divorced, but it explained why she lived alone in such a large house. "Well, you definitely made some good choices. This is not your average bathroom." The shower head in question was one of those large modern rain-style fixtures mounted directly overhead. I could see the water droplets forming and falling steadily into the bowl she placed below. "All right," I said, setting down my toolbox. "This should be pretty straightforward. Most likely just needs a new washer or some thread sealant. I'll leave you to it and try to stay out of your way." "Oh, you're not in my way at all," she said. "But I'll go downstairs and let you work. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee, iced tea?" "I'm good for now, thanks. This shouldn't take too long." She nodded and headed downstairs, her footsteps fading as I got to work. I started by examining the shower head connection, checking for obvious signs of wear or loose fittings. The problem seemed to be with the swivel joint where the shower head connected to the arm extending from the wall. I carefully removed the shower head and discovered that the rubber washer inside was indeed cracked and warped with age. Simple enough fix. I had a replacement washer in my toolbox that would work perfectly. But here's where things started to go sideways. After installing the new washer and reattaching the shower head, I needed to test it to make sure the seal was tight and the leak was fixed. So, I turned on the water. Just a gentle flow at first to check for drips. Everything looked good, so I turned it up a bit more to really test the connection. The water pressure was strong, much stronger than I'd expected. I reached up to adjust the angle of the shower head to direct the water toward the drain. But as I twisted it, something must have loosened because suddenly water exploded out at full force directly into my face and chest. I instinctively stepped backward to get out of the stream, but my foot slipped on the wet tile floor. I reached out to steady myself, and my elbow knocked into a large shampoo bottle that had been sitting on the built-in shelf near the shower entrance. The bottle went flying, hit the marble floor with a loud crash, and shampoo went everywhere on the floor, on my pants, creating this slippery mess while water continued to spray out of the shower head. I lunged forward to turn off the water, but by that point, I was completely soaked. My t-shirt was clinging to my body, my jeans were drenched, and there was shampoo and water all over the pristine bathroom floor. "Great," I muttered, surveying the damage. I had managed to turn a simple 5-minute repair into what looked like a small disaster zone. I stepped carefully out of the shower area and called out toward the hallway, hoping she could hear me downstairs. "Hey Janine, do you mind if I borrow a towel real quick? I had a little mishap up here." I waited, listening for a response, but heard nothing. The house was quiet except for the sound of water still dripping from my clothes onto the floor. I waited another few seconds and called out again, a bit louder this time. "Janine, everything's okay, but I could use a towel if you have one handy." Still nothing. I assumed she was probably in another part of the house, maybe outside in the garden or in the basement where she couldn't hear me. I didn't want to go dripping through her beautiful home looking for her. So, I decided to improvise. I figured I'd just change out of my wet clothes, clean up the mess, and dry off as best I could. I had a backup shirt in my truck that I could put on afterward. It wasn't ideal, but it seemed like the most considerate option given the circumstances. I peeled off my soaked t-shirt and jeans, hanging them over the edge of the bathtub to drip dry. Then I looked around for something to dry myself with. The only towel visible was a small hand towel hanging on a decorative rack near the sink. One of those fancy guest towels that's more for show than actual function. It was barely large enough to cover anything, but it was better than nothing. I used it to dry my face and chest, trying to soak up as much water as possible, while being careful not to drip on the floor any more than I already had. I was standing there feeling somewhat ridiculous in just my boxers with this tiny towel when I heard it. A gentle knock on the bathroom door. 3 soft, measured taps. Then her voice, clear and calm, "Need a towel." My heart skipped a beat. Not just because I was caught off guard, though I definitely was, but because there was something in the way she said it. The tone was so casual, so knowing, as if she had been perfectly aware of what was happening on the other side of the door, like she'd been standing there long enough to hear the whole commotion, and had been waiting for just the right moment to offer her assistance. I stood there for a moment, still dripping slightly, holding that ridiculous little decorative towel and trying to process what had just happened. My wet clothes were hanging in her bathtub. There was shampoo still pulled on her expensive marble floor, and I was standing half naked in her bathroom while she waited patiently on the other side of the door. I started, then cleared my throat and tried again. Yeah, I had a little incident with the shower. Got completely soaked. She knocked again, just twice, this time, a bit more assertively. "I heard something fall," she said. "Are you all right in there? Nothing broken, I hope." "No, nothing broken," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady and casual. "Just knocked over a shampoo bottle. I'm really sorry about the mess. The shower kind of got the better of me." There was a pause, maybe 3 or 4 seconds of silence. Then she spoke again, her voice softer now, almost gentle. "I can bring you a proper towel if you'd like. That little hand towel isn't going to do you much good." I felt my face flush, realizing she somehow knew exactly what my situation was. Had she heard more than I thought? Could she somehow tell from the sounds that I'd stripped out of my wet clothes? "That would be great, actually," I said, trying to sound grateful rather than embarrassed. "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." "Of course," she replied. "I'll just leave it right outside the door for you. Give me just a moment." I heard her footsteps moving away down the hallway, soft and measured. Then, after maybe 30 seconds, the footsteps returned. There was a soft sound like something being set down gently. And then the footsteps faded away again. I waited another 10 or 15 seconds to make sure she was gone, then carefully cracked open the bathroom door just wide enough to peek out. Sure enough, there on the small hallway table just outside the door was a neatly folded towel. It was thick and white and fluffy, the kind of towel you find in expensive hotels, clearly much higher quality than anything I had at home. I reached out, grabbed it quickly, and shut the door again. The towel was incredibly soft and felt like it had been warmed, as if it had just come out of the dryer. As I dried off properly for the first time since the incident, I couldn't help but notice that it smelled faintly of the same vanilla scent I detected throughout her house. Once I was dry, I used some toilet paper to clean up the spilled shampoo and water from the floor as best I could. I put my backup shirt on. Thankfully, it was dry, but I was stuck wearing my damp jeans since I didn't have another pair with me. When I finally headed downstairs to thank her and let her know the shower was fixed, I found her in the kitchen, standing at the island with a coffee cup in her hands. She was looking out the window toward her backyard, seeming completely relaxed and unperturbed by the whole situation. She turned when she heard my footsteps and gave me that same warm smile she'd greeted me with earlier. "Feeling better?" she asked, taking a sip of her coffee. "Much better, thank you," I replied, holding up the towel. "And thank you for this. You saved me from having to drive home looking like I'd fallen in a swimming pool." She laughed, a soft, melodious sound. "You wouldn't be the first person to be defeated by that shower. You should see what it did to me last week when I was trying to clean the glass doors. I ended up looking like I'd been caught in a rainstorm." We both laughed at that, and for a moment the whole awkward situation felt normal and harmless. Just two people sharing a funny story about a misbehaving shower. But then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "You know, you're welcome to use my shower anytime you're in the area working on something. I certainly don't mind, and it's much nicer than those awful guest bathrooms at most people's houses." I raised an eyebrow, not quite sure how to interpret the offer. "Hopefully next time I won't need a rescue towel," I said with a nervous laugh. She just smiled and took another sip of her coffee, not saying anything in response. There was something in her expression, a slight sparkle in her eyes, maybe that made me wonder if there was more to her comment than simple hospitality. "Anyway," I said, trying to move past the moment, "the shower's all fixed. It was just a worn washer like I suspected. Should be good as new now." "Wonderful," she said. "What do I owe you for the repair and the house call?" "Nothing at all," I replied, waving off the suggestion, happy to help out. "Brandon's been a good friend, and family is family," she insisted on at least covering the cost of the washer, pressing a $20 bill into my hand despite my protests. As I gathered up my tools and prepared to leave, she walked me to the front door. "Thank you again," she said as I stepped onto the porch. "It's so nice to know there are still people willing to help out a neighbor." "Anytime," I replied, meaning it. "If anything else breaks around here, just give Brandon a call and he'll let me know." As I drove home that afternoon, I found myself thinking about the whole encounter. Most of it had been perfectly normal, just a straightforward repair job and a friendly homeowner grateful for the help. But there were those few moments, particularly the towel incident and her parting comments, that stuck with me in a way I couldn't quite explain. Now, most people would have let that moment pass and never thought about it again. Just chalked it up to one of those slightly awkward but ultimately harmless situations that happen when you're doing favors for friends of friends. But something about the way she'd handled the whole thing, the calm confidence, the complete lack of awkwardness on her part, the way she seemed to know exactly what I needed before I even asked for it, made me wonder if there was more going on beneath the surface than I'd initially realized. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing that I was encountering Janine much more frequently than I would have expected. Not by design or any deliberate effort on either of our parts, but it seemed like every time I went over to Brandon and Lisa's house, she was there. She was helping Lisa with the baby, bringing over dinner, watering the plants while they were out of town, or just stopping by to visit, always with a perfectly reasonable explanation for her presence. But somehow, she was always there. And every time she greeted me the same way, that same warm, calm smile, that soft voice that seemed to carry just a hint of something I couldn't quite identify. And every now and then, she dropped a comment that would make me pause and wonder what exactly she meant by it. One afternoon, I was over at Brandon's helping him install a new ceiling fan in the nursery. I had taken a break and gone downstairs to grab a cold drink from the refrigerator when Janine appeared in the kitchen. Behind me. "Hot work?" she asked, and I turned to see her looking at me with an appraising expression. "Yeah, it's pretty warm up there with all the insulation," I replied, taking a long drink from my soda can. She moved past me to get something from the counter, brushing close enough that I caught that same vanilla scent I remembered from her towel. As she passed, she said quietly, "You might want to be careful with that shirt. It's a bit tighter than the last one I saw you in. Looks good, though." I nearly choked on my drink, turning to look at her with surprise, but she had already moved on to whatever she was doing, acting as if she just commented on the